Hello, and welcome back to another jam-packed episode of the Hammercast. I'm your host, Alex, the Hebrew Hammer Salkin, and again, I have another special episode. You might remember from the previous one, we had the Hammerhead of the Year, Justin Schuth, dropping some knowledge bombs and talking about his experiences. And I thought, well, I would be doing you all a huge disservice if I did not have the Inner Circle member of the year, Josh Harris, to come and join us. Josh, welcome back to the Hammercast.
Thank you. And it's an honor to follow up Justin because he's a beast.
He is. He is. In fact, he had some great stories. You've heard the one probably where I guess one of his lifeguard colleagues, a younger guy, pulled his daughter to the side and said, "Hey, is your dad on roids?"
Yeah.
There was another one, a brand new one. He had a guy who was a young rugby stud, yeah, who was one of the volunteer lifeguards, who was very taken aback at just how fit Justin was, and he said something to the effect of, uh, "I guess I won't be able to underestimate people just because they're almost 50 anymore." So I was like, "All right, he's
Now
crushing it."
listen, you put the work in,
That's all it
and
takes. Well, you had something too that you said to me that I really liked hearing. I want to start off with this because I don't want to
okay.
bury the lead. You said something about last year's training. Please, I have to ask you to repeat it because it wouldn't even sound good coming out of my
Oh,
mouth. It's got to come right
thanks.
out of you.
Yes. So I turned 53 this past September, and I was hands down the calendar year 2024 was the best year of training I've ever had. The most amount of gains all across the board in all the different disciplines that I train in.
Now, I mean, how crazy is that? Most people think that it's game over by the time 29 and 364 days rolls around. They're like, oh, I just hit 30. I can't do anything anymore. But 53, and you had the best training year of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd even say that after turning 53, like September, yeah, I mean fall into this winter up till now has been even like that's sort of the bump, that those few months have been a little bit heads and shoulders above the previous months. But it's just been a really cool journey understanding how to connect everything and
Yeah.
not having things sabotage other things.
Talk about that for a second, not having things sabotage other things. Because I think a lot of people, even if they have their own details that they would use to fill in the blanks, um, I'm curious where you've experienced it in the past. Because I think everybody's had that sort of a thing. And so, like, what's that been like for you?
Yeah, so just a quick overview. So I train in, I guess you could technically call it five different disciplines if we consider like your world, the kettlebell calisthenics world. Then I've been doing the one and two hand steel club work. Then I have like movement and locomotion. Then I train in Sistema, which is a Russian martial arts. So I guess just really four then. Um, but trying to figure out how to work all of the different things that I know how to do within all those disciplines to where one sits in a maintenance phase, another is in a gain phase, then that one that's in a gain phase comes back to a maintenance phase, and just learning how to push and pull the different areas into maintenance phase, gain phases. I did not know how to do that until getting involved with the inner circle and just having our deep dives on stuff over the years. So what would have happened in the past would be something like, let's try to make gains in all those disciplines every week.
Yeah.
So then you just start killing yourself with volume and intensity, and then you can't recover.
Right.
And then you
That's
hit the wall.
Yeah. And that happens at any age. People think, well, I'm 50, so of course it's happened. Or I'm, 40 or whatever. It's like every year, by the way, it just seems like it gets younger. I remember it
Right.
used to be like, oh, when you're in your 50s, it's going to be different. And then it's like, oh, when you're in your 40s, so, oh, when you hit 35, like they're always like bargaining downward. And all it is, I think more than anything, it's like what you're describing is a lack of understanding of how to surge forward effectively. And you're right. You can't make progress if we could make progress day in and day out, everyone would be a Sistema champion or a
Right.
black belt in jujitsu, or they'd be benching 1,000 pounds. It's like there's a cycle that goes with all of it. And I think if you understand it, at least in one discipline, it's easier to transfer that into another. But you have a couple that I think are interesting because they are, in some sense, uh, I don't know if I would say parallel to each other, but they're somewhat similar. So there's like a strength component to the steel mace, which I have to admit I don't know a lot about. I've done a little bit of stuff with it, but
Yeah.
I see it as like it's still more strength focused, with a strong element of movement. Would you say that's about accurate?
Yeah, it's also so the programs I'm doing are from Mark Wildman, and
Yeah.
I have this adjustable club, and so there's two hand club and single arm club, and they both work different mechanics, and they're I would say two hand club, the way he programs it, it's very much a strength endurance
Yeah.
because the way he does it is it's a 30 on 30 off EMOM,
Hmm.
8 exercises, the way you have the club, like your left hand is at the bottom, your right hand's on the top. You do 8 exercises, 30 on, 30 off. Then you reverse your hands,
Mm,
do the same 8, and then you repeat those two. So it's 32 minutes total, but you're working for 16 and resting for 16.
I see.
And so and each level, and there's 7 levels, and the complexity changes. It's very good programming. But what it does is it definitely works rotational strength,
Hmm.
strength endurance, and then when you go to single arm club, you really see where your deficiencies are
Hmm.
mechanically and strength wise. Like my left side it's caught up now, but when I first started doing single arm club, and he has sort of foundational exercises like we have in the kettlebell world,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden you're doing something like I don't know, pullovers or what's called an inside circle or outside circle, and just you can just feel the differences from one side to the other, and so that's helped me clean up some of the. I mean, I don't even know if I want to say I was compensating. It's helped me clean up some mechanics,
Yeah.
which is then transferred over to like stuff I'm doing in your world. But then the stuff I'm doing in your world transfers over to the club. You know what I mean? Like it all feeds itself. Now, it took me a while to figure it out.
Yeah. I think now I'm curious what if you feel that this helped because I this was something that I instituted. I think it started last year. Maybe it was at a minimum it was last year. It might have been 2023. I have to go double check. But I started putting different missions in the inner circle issues. Meaning it would be like mission number one is like here's how to take the principles and practices of this issue and on a miniature level apply it to what you're currently doing so that you understand that if you're doing something else you can still get the benefit of the focus of this issue. And mission number two is everything that we've talked about plus here's how to put it into a program and here's the program itself.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. And so what I did a lot of last year was obviously I've cataloged all of the IC workouts since I jumped on, and I have done a lot of them. But what I've also learned how to do now at this stage is kind of dovetailing on what you just said is we had one a few months back where I think it was something about what was it like 1 by 20, like
Mm-hmm.
just 20 reps.
Yep.
And so what I did with that was I didn't do the program as you wrote it, but I took that concept and I made the 20 reps. That was my assistance work
Yeah, nice.
on top of some kettlebell work.
Perfect.
And I found like maybe 3 exercises and I would do, yeah, like lower, upper, like maybe an example would be lateral lunges, body weight, 10 each leg, no, 20 each leg.
Mm-hmm.
Then um, face pulls on with rings, and then like push-ups on the kettlebells.
Nice.
Those 3 would be the assistance work after having done, say, some double kettlebell work. And then after that, I would do some OS type thing.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've done is gone in and taken various, I guess, concepts and components that you've provided and found a way to draft them into my fitness journey if I'm not doing a specific program as you wrote it.
No, I think it's very smart. And I think one of the things, too, that for people who are listening who didn't catch it is that you're looking at the gaps in a training program as they are now. And you're filling, we'll take the 1 by 20 approach, too. You're filling in two because probably you're not doing sets of 20 with your training. So you're
No.
adding in some high rep stuff and you're doing it for, as you pointed out, assistance work. So it's stuff that for muscles and stuff like that that are not getting, or movement patterns that are not getting directly trained. And very often, both of these things have a nice carryover into the other stuff that we're doing so that the snags or the friction that we run into in our training kind of, I wouldn't say it goes by the wayside, but it becomes a little bit easier. It's the sort of a thing
Oh
that
yeah.
doesn't end up holding you back.
Yeah, I mean, there were times in the past where I maybe hadn't done lateral lunges, even just body weight in a
Yeah.
while, and you go and you do it, and your body feels terrible.
Oh yeah.
It's just like the range of motion is shot, and you're just it just feels wrong. But I don't have that happen anymore
Yeah.
because of the fact that I've figured out how to draft this stuff in, and really, looking at some of the questions you shot me before we jumped on. I have to say that I've made a very conscious effort in the last year to implement OS on a much more regular basis. Original strength, for those who don't know what that is, on a regular basis, like I've never done it before.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's the warm up, sometimes it's incorporated in the workout, sometimes it's the end of the workout. But doing that has just helped across the board, just overall mobility, just strength and recovery.
Mm.
Recovery is much better for me than I thought it would be in my 50s. Everyone was like, "Oh man, recovery changes in your 50s, bro." You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I get it, but if you're doing the right supplemental work, it's not an issue.
Yeah, I think more than anything, it seems like, as we get older, number one, even just not even in training terms, but we have a tendency to get set in our ways. And so a lot of times when people are talking about, oh, your recovery is not going to be as good when you get older, they're talking about trying to do the same thing they did in the same way when they were in their 20s and their 30s, and they're not doing the other stuff that help to keep their body in good working order. It's like I remember some years ago I was in Florida and I was there to visit a friend, and I didn't realize I'm such a nerd. I didn't realize that it was spring break. So I was like, "Why are these hotels so expensive?" I don't understand. And it's Fort Lauderdale, so it's not like it's a super
Uh,
cheap place anyway. But then I
yeah,
was like, "Oh, okay, it's spring break." And so I got an Airbnb, and I was staying in an Airbnb in a house like a decent distance from where he was. But one of the things is walking through the neighborhood. There was this one house that had, I think it was a 1969 Mach 1 Ford Mustang in the garage. And I was like, and I'm not a car guy, but
yeah,
anybody who sees that old Mustang is like, that's more, in some ways, it's more impressive than the Ferrari. Like somebody
yeah,
gets a brand new Ferrari. It's like you expect the Ferrari to work well. But if you see an old muscle car, from the classic era that still looks great, still works well, all this other stuff. That says every bit as much about the owner as it does about our appreciation for things that are quote unquote old, but that still work really well. And more than likely, I would bet a car like that takes a little bit more maintenance. There are probably a couple of more checks that you're going to need to do, but it still performs. And so, you can't expect your body to perform like that Mach 1 if you don't do all the stuff that it's required to keep the Mach 1 not just looking nice in a garage, but
hmm,
actually performing out on the street. And so, I think the analogy of the human body as being similar to like a vehicle is a pretty apt analogy for the most part.
yeah.
And that's probably the best one I think in terms of getting older because it's possible to make mad gains as you get older.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what feels good about where I'm at now and how I'll continue to march forward is that this is the most balanced the training has ever been.
Hmm.
And the end result of that is it feels like it's never felt before, just
Yeah.
day in and day out. Like just being able to get out there, and I'm super consistent. I train 7 days a week. I train outside as much as I can. I do believe that 4 season outdoor training does help the immune system.
Yeah.
I mean, I've found it to help, and the only times I'll come inside is when it gets to be like single digit wind chill, and you know that if you're out there for 25 minutes, your fingers are going to go numb, and you've got kettlebells. You know,
Flying over your head. Yeah. That's
yeah. And I mean, I have to bring the iron inside because you can't grip a kettlebell in 10-degree weather that's been sitting outside. You're gonna have problems.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not easy to warm them up either. That's like a deep sort of cold that doesn't go away
Yeah,
very easily. No,
it
that's
takes
for sure.
hours for them to warm up. But yeah, so I mean, the things that I got into last year, I talked about this, I think a little bit on one of our inner circle Zoom calls, but for those who weren't on it, I have to give you props for the Power Up Your Press program. That for me, I think out of all the ones I've done, and I went into that specifically wanting to increase pressing because I don't feel like I don't feel like I'm one of these people that is gifted in pressing. That's just overhead pressing. Just never been. I mean, they're just dudes that are strong in that
Yeah.
area. I'm okay. I'm not. I mean, I'm okay. It's respectable, but I was never able to strictly press a 32 kilogram single, and that was something I wanted to do. Even though I generally don't train to chase weight goals,
Yeah.
that's not really what I'm doing right now. But I just got a wild hair on that one,
Yeah.
and I know Jim. You had trained Jim on it, and I like him.
Yeah.
I like the stuff he has to say, and I thought, let me just try this. So, what was cool about that program? I mean, I was able to get there and press it, but was the assistance work, the supplemental work that you
Yeah.
incorporated into that really hit areas of my core that I didn't know needed some work.
Yeah.
And I understand that like the whole connection, like the chain now with pressing, it all makes more sense to me because
Yeah.
I experienced it on a physical level.
I think, yeah, well, I'm glad you enjoyed it because I have to say too that there's another guy, he's going to be a future Hammercast guest, Anthony, I think it's Poblatsky, I think is how it's pronounced, a guy from Poland, hit his half body weight military press doing that program. And it would have been
Wow.
something he had been chasing for quite some time. And he's a busy dad and, works full time. And so one of the things that I noticed is that a lot of people who are, even if they're very good programmers in terms of pressing, it seems like they take the principle of to press a lot, you must press a lot. And they're like, okay, so I'm going to find a way to make you press a lot. And I'm more of a mindset, and this has been my experience too, is that people need a decent enough amount of variety in the movement pattern itself before they try to touch the peaks of what they're after. Because all too often it just seems like people focus like so myopically on the one thing that they're trying to do. Let's say heavier overhead press, and they're not looking at, well, what are some of the things that if I were better at a baseline would shorten the path. Because I I'm going off memory here, but I remember I probably one of the best. It was the best workshop I never attended. It was the original Easy Strength seminar with, I think it was called Scientific Strength Secrets at the time. This was with Pavel and Dan John, and it was you. This was in the RKC era. You had to be an RKC just to attend, meaning they
Okay.
didn't open it up to just anybody. It was like you already had to be like within the tribe, as it were. But I bought the DVD set some years back, and I think one of the things that they mentioned on the very last DVD, I think Pavel mentioned it, is like there are three things in particular that are the most, I wouldn't say damaging, but they're like, they take the biggest toll on the body. And if I remember correctly, it was like number two was volume, meaning the more
Mm-hmm.
volume, more takes more of a toll. But the number one, if I remember correctly, was specificity. And it's like the more you do of just that one thing, it's like, yes, you are going to get better at it, but then we're dealing with a biological organism. So you're going to have to deal with overdevelopment of certain muscles, maybe too much stress on certain connective tissues, maybe not enough strength in some of the surrounding ones. So I thought, well, why not just include that in a program so that you can avoid a lot of those speed bumps? And then as the day gets closer, then you switch to something that's a little bit more specific. And I'm not the first person who's done it, but I was very pleased that it worked so well for Jim that I was like, I can't just let this have only been for Jim. I've got to make this available for others as well. So I think it's particularly cool too that for somebody like you who is looking to try to cover as many bases as possible, you still managed to hit a lifetime military pressing PR.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, not to give too much away on the program for those who don't own it, but there is more truth than people realize if they haven't already figured this out, what bottoms up pressing does for your pressing.
Yeah.
You just got to do it. Just got to
Yeah.
get there. Um, that's one to easily ignore because you have to lower the weight. Um, and when you start doing it, you're not doing big time weight, and it's the most honest form of pressing I've ever done because you can't shuck and jive on it, man. Like it's yeah,
Yeah, you really can't get away with too much body English either because
yeah,
you can do that on lighter weights for higher reps, and then when it gets heavier, like, oh, the weight's not going anywhere. I should be able to do this. You don't really run into that with the bottoms up. And the other thing is the bottoms up, you don't need a lot of volume, and it makes a big impact.
Yeah, I think Jeff Newport in one of his recent emails was talking about pressing and going from like pressing 24s to 32s or something, and he
Yeah,
was saying that there was some guy he knew that could press 28s easily, but could barely do 12 kilogram bottoms up.
yeah, it's a bad
Like
sign.
it just like the heavy pressing, regular pressing didn't carry over to bottoms up, but the other way, bottoms up to regular pressing carries over.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a minimalist, but I do believe that if you can do more with less and cover more ground, it's worth doing for sure. And for instance, I'll have to send you the the protocol. Um, but I did a specialized bottoms. I'm see like I don't I'm like a guinea pig for all these things. So I put my reputation on the line. I was like, I gotta build back up to pressing the 40 kilo. It's been a while since I've done it. I'm gonna try it with bottoms up, and I'm gonna do an experiment to see how this works. And I never pressed anything heavier than 28 kilos in this program. It was mostly between 20 and then we'll say maybe 25 kilos because I used a little bit of micro loading. And yeah, the 40 went up when I had to press it. And that was even with a 2 week break because I had an issue with my upper back and I couldn't do almost any overhead work. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
uh,
impressive.
yeah, so I think the carryover that you get from stuff like that too, again, it's like not only do you get the benefit of stronger grip and all this other stuff, but your shoulders my shoulders appreciate it quite a bit more. And it
Well,
seems like,
you really feel what needs to be in the mix to press because it's easy to sort of fake it, or you can fake it with just regular kettlebell pressing, regular grip, and all that. But then when you get into the bottoms up, you literally have to include all these other muscle groups
yeah,
and tendons and ligaments. So to me, it was a bit of a re-education in how to press,
yeah,
path of travel, all that.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, by the end, you had 32 kilo pressed to your name, which is pretty
Yeah.
cool.
And that's doing it at, 6 in the morning, which is
Yeah,
not, I'm not going to, even though I train in 6 in the morning, 5:36 in the morning, like that's never been my optimal time. I'd say 10
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
10 to 12.
I'm with you. Lately, I've been training more in the evening, and
Mm,
that's really more like the hardest part. Really is getting started. You're like, "Ah, there's so many. I don't want to. Particularly, I'm doing more calisthenic stuff. I'm going to the local park and training, and it's like, it's kind of cold. Maybe it's not a
right.
big deal if I skip it. You gotta like that's the hardest part is
Yeah.
pumping yourself up when
Oh,
you do it.
but see, that's where for me, that's where the original strength has helped
Yeah,
because when what I've been doing on my days, because I do the kettlebell work on Mondays and Fridays, I've been doing 7 minutes of continuous OS work as a warm up.
nice.
And that and the OS stuff I'm doing is, like single arm rocking, neck nods, some dead bugs, the contralateral bird dogs, things like that to really wake up the central nervous system. That to me has always been the challenge with early morning training is
Yeah,
getting the CNS to function in a coordinated fashion
yeah.
and responsive fashion. And so OS has been huge for that for me.
Oh yeah. No, I that's one of the reasons I included in just about everything is that not only has it been helpful for me, but again, it's like the foundation for everybody else's movement patterns. So it's like obviously the most important thing that you can possibly do is, really for your long-term training, is making sure that you first move the way that you were made and then start moving the way that you want to. So,
Right.
a lot of people are like, oh, I want to press heavy. I want to do one arm put. My favorite story is a really strong gal. She could do 32 kilo get ups. I mean, she was no slouch. She was like
Wow.
crazy strong. But she couldn't do too many push ups. And it wasn't because, I mean, more than anything, I think she just really hadn't practiced them. That was like the real
Mm-hmm.
thing. But she'd asked about training for, she asked me, like, what should I do to train for the one arm push up? And I said, well, how many regular push ups can you do? And she said, like, five. And so I was like, if you get that up to like 20,
Mm-hmm.
like the answers that I give you are going to be a lot better. And a lot of people will sometimes balk at that, but again, it's like you get the foundation in, move with the more foundational movement patterns, and then the more complicated stuff that we all want to do. The snatches and the military presses and all this other stuff become quite a bit easier. And so it's same thing. I mean, again, so take that principle, apply it to the most foundational of all movement patterns, and it's like the dominoes just fall right where they're supposed to.
Yeah, and you've said this in several inner circle meetings that um, general warm up, specific warm up,
Yeah.
and I really think that once you draft that in correctly, it really sets the tone for the workouts for consistency. Because that's one of the things getting older that you wake up in a different body every day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what starts happening, and maybe you get bad sleep and you're out there trying to do some endurance stuff with some heavy load, and you got to get your brain in gear and your body in gear and the coordination and all that. And I just have found that movement, general movement, OS, that type of thing, then do some light rep sets with whatever the exercise of the day is.
Yeah.
And you really hammered that in, no pun intended. Um,
Puns allowed.
and so but that's something I really put into play last year. I sometimes half-assed it, where I might just do the soup of the day and
Yeah.
not the movement stuff. But you
Sure.
can tell, like, your shoulders and elbow, like all the joints just don't feel the same.
Yeah. I
So
I think Ido Portal said it very well. He's a movement maestro who worked very closely with Conor McGregor during his prime to like help him with his general movement. And he worked with other people too, like Gunnar Nelson and some other pretty well-known athletes. And but I think Gunnar Nelson was his name. In the off chance that Gunnar is listening and his last name is not Nelson, please forgive me. But one of the things Udo once said was, even Mike Tyson, who we would all agree is like probably the best boxer to ever do it. I mean, at a minimum in the 20th century, even Mike Tyson has to squat down to pick up his toddler. And what he meant by that
right.
was Mike Tyson's like the ultimate boxing specialist. I mean, it's like you see him fight, and in his prime, it was just like, man, it would be like trying to walk into a meat grinder. Like he was just brutal. Um, but at the end of the day, outside the ring, to do basic stuff like picking up his kids and all these other things, he would still have to be able to perform foundational movements. So there might be movements that are not directly for which there's no direct relation with boxing. Like you don't have to squat in boxing, but you have to be able to squat in anything else. So the focus on too much specificity, I think, particularly as you get older, where in order to keep your body in good working order, pretty much everything has to be in good working order. And I think you pointed it out very nicely. The general warm up really seems to help quite a bit because you're moving the body in ways that you're maybe not training. So you're keeping that ability to move like that, and you're keeping that vitality even
Yeah.
outside of the movements that you're trying to improve on.
Yeah, and I think one thing I've really learned last fall just from exploring this stuff is that a lot of us, I mean, I'm very guilty of this. I never realized what the term core really, what body areas that includes.
Yeah,
I always thought about it as abs,
the six pack.
lower six pack,
Yeah,
the front. But when you think about your back, your upper back, the core on the sides, like all intercostal muscles, all that stuff, when you start addressing that in the training, whether it's the warm up or the workouts themselves, that's that balance thing that I was mentioned earlier. Like that's for me, I think probably the biggest change
yeah,
is I've addressed those deficiencies.
yeah. That's great, and I think that is.
Thanks.
I think you've revealed the secret too to how 2024 was your best training year ever, was because you did the stuff that helped you to stay as reasonably fit and sharp in a wide array of different things. And forget about the specifics like kettlebells, calisthenics, the mace, whatever, but think in terms of like your overall, what is your body supposed to be able to do? The more you're like Mark Rifkin made a great point about this, and he's a master SFG emeritus and one of the smartest coaches out there. And he said, if there's any movement pattern that you can't do, meaning you physically cannot do it, you will find out just how far the effects of that reverberate through the rest of your body. Because for many years he couldn't squat, and he could barely walk because his
Mm.
knee was so bad. I don't remember which knee it was, but he had a knee that was so bad, like barely bent, and it was from a gymnastics injury, and it further injured it in powerlifting and stuff like that. He ultimately got a knee replacement, which gave him a brand new lease on so much of his training. But he said like uh, like if you leave out just one of those movement patterns, it has huge impact on the rest of you. And so take that to its logical conclusion and think about, well, you can lunge. Can you lunge sideways, like you pointed out?
Yeah.
Can you do curtsy lunges? Like can your body move in funky ways? It doesn't have to move heavy, but can it move at all in some of these
Right.
funky patterns?
Yeah. And the other thing, with a lot of this stuff that I didn't really think about carryover the way I do now, but there's been, um, I mean, I can snatch a 32 very comfortably now.
Impressive.
And I wasn't going after that or practicing it. I can just do it,
Yeah.
because of all this other work that I've done that has, I guess, carried over, just strengthening these other areas that weren't that strong before. And I think also, you understand the mechanics on a deeper level. I mean, snatching specifically for me was probably for a lot of people was one of the ugliest exercises when I started doing kettlebell training. I mean, it was, dude, I tore up like anyone, I tore up my calluses, banged up my wrists. I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't pretty. And then, you trash your calluses and you can't grip anything for a few days. That has to heal. So, but now like all these sort of, I guess, more advanced movements feel natural because my body feels good,
Yeah.
and there's no like weird compensations. And the other thing, I know I did mention this on the inner circle meeting a few months ago, but the other thing that was born out of the power up your press was that I was able to snatch double 24s.
Yeah.
And that was something that had eluded me. Like I could get them up, but it was ugly.
Yeah.
It was ugly,
Yeah.
you know?
And think about that too. Like again, you weren't training for the snatches, but because you expanded what you were able to do with the military press by doing different pressing variations and things like that, and of course you had the basics of snatching and swinging and other stuff like that. It's a lot easier to connect the dots and shorten the path to new
Mm-hmm.
skills when you have a wider array of them. And that's one of the things that I've always tried to make a focus on for the inner circle is that people could get as generally strong and fit and healthy as possible. And then when they want to take side quests and they want to do, let's say, power up your press, or they want to do other programs, they're now in a position where they can afford, quote unquote, to do something a little bit more specific and work towards something a little bit more precise, let's say.
Yeah. So here's something I've been playing with the last few months because, I do appreciate the other guests you bring on and learning, kind of what their journeys are. So lately, what I've been doing on my kettlebell days, which are Mondays and Fridays, is I'm having, let's think of it like a 3 block workout.
Mm-hmm.
So not including the warm up. So you do the warm up, the general, the specific, and then I'm kind of taking a page out of Levi's book, like taking a GS type workout, but doing it hard style in terms of the like adjusting the volume because
Yeah.
the way, for the people that aren't familiar with how the sport guys do it, it's heavy volume.
Yeah. Yeah.
Heavy volume. And you can't do one of those workouts and then turn around and do a steel club workout the next day. Like your
Yeah.
body's just going to be hosed. So, like let's say he has something like, oh, I don't know, he'll be using double kettlebells and it'll be like 5 long cycles in 30 seconds. And then you're going into something else for 30 seconds. Then you're going to rest a minute.
Yeah.
So like I'll play with the work rest ratios a little bit and the volume a little bit. So that'll be like block one will be like Levi inspired. Then block two might be something Pat Flynn strong on inspired. Like Pat has a thing called swing, swing, other thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
where you're on like an EMOM. So you might do single arm swings for 20 seconds or 30 seconds and then rest, and then the other side for 20, 30 seconds, and then I'll do push-ups. Then the Alex component will be the OS or the calisthenic work, or maybe the 1x20 or something like that. So
Yeah.
I've been playing with taking like stuff from all you guys and combining it.
And when you know the principles well enough, and those are all three different. I mean, I think Pat and I would have
You guys overlap, yeah.
yeah, ours are similar enough because we both come from the hard style school. But Levi, for instance, being that he's more of a GS guy, to know the principles well enough to be able to make those adjustments and make it something that isn't just a bunch of random, you know, exercise, but it's actually something that's moving you in a particular direction. It takes a good, deep understanding. And I
Yeah,
think,
thanks.
yeah, I think, well, it's certainly a testament to the fact that, you've been such a constant at the Q&As over the last couple of years. And the other thing is that you actually do it, like you live it. It's not just you're there once a month and, you
Yeah, but
hey,
but what's been interesting about this is, again, like, for people who haven't watched Levi's stuff, man, I mean, it's beast mode stuff. I mean, this dude is super, super strong.
yeah,
But like, you've mentioned before, he's a devotee
yeah,
of that discipline. And I mean, he's, double snatching 36s for 10 reps. I mean, it's like intense stuff. But, to bite the concepts from that, I think of it, for those who don't know, I work in music. I'm a producer. I do a lot of composing as well, fusing different musical styles, but having the theory and the understanding behind all that to put them together. It's a similar thing. And I found that, at least for right now, combining you three guys in the way I'm doing it, that has been like on another level, you
yeah.
know, of in terms of gains, because now the double kettlebell work has gone up a level
That's great.
because of combining all that stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think if I was just doing the Levi component alone, I don't think it would be the same. In fact, I know it wouldn't be,
Yeah,
you
it would
know?
be, yeah, of course. And that makes perfect sense because, his approach, given that it's very GS focused and particularly, he actually competes. And I think he's
Yeah.
gotten to like master of sport level. I mean, he's really freaking strong. But you're right. Yeah, it would be probably more focused toward whatever it would take to, I would bet, because I'm not familiar with I watch his stuff that he does for his own training. I'm not familiar with the stuff that because I think he has like online programming for
He
students.
does. Yeah.
Yeah.
I checked it out. So, like, what he does is he provides 2 workouts a week.
There you go.
And I mean, he's been doing it for years. So, like, I think he's up to like 300 weeks.
Wow.
I mean, so there's like 600 workouts in there. And I mean, I don't think it's meant to be, all right, anyone who jumps on there today should start at workout one. What
Yeah.
I've done is gone in there and fished around and found what I feel is going to help what I'm doing, or what I want my journey to be. Because I think one of the things that we all fall into when we don't know that much is, well, excuse me, that's what the man told me to do.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
That's what the trainer told me to do online. That's what the workout said to do. And so, for you guys that are providing online training, none of you know exactly what we're all doing.
Yeah.
I mean, we could be all monkeying around and tweaking stuff. And so I've been as disciplined as I can be when doing programs specifically as the way they're written. But now I'm at a point where, double kettlebell stuff is really, I'm just in that mode where I want to continue to do that training. It's lower rep stuff,
Hmm.
supplemented by higher rep stuff, supplemented by movement.
Yeah.
And that's what's working for me, to then train in all these other disciplines and have it all kind of marry together.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
I think we could sum it up by saying, show a man to lift and he will be swole for a day. Teach a man to lift and he will be swole for a lifetime.
I like that. That should be the new T-shirt.
I think
Uh,
it's going to have to be. I just came up with that just now because I was like,
no one steal it.
yes, exactly. Patent pending. Uh,
Yeah.
so now, okay, so you don't have any lifting stuff out per se online, at least not that I'm aware of. But if
No, I don't. It's. I mean, I guess I could post stuff. I just don't like training for me. It's a solitary thing.
yeah,
I
of
don't
course.
listen to music. I mean, I'll film if I want to check my technique. If I'm
Sure.
concerned that something's off,
Yeah, yeah.
I'll roll it. But otherwise, I just like to be out there in the cold
Of
or
course.
the heat training.
If people are interested in looking into your music producing
Yes.
stuff,
Uh,
how can they
yeah.
find you?
JoshHarris.com.
Josh Harris.
Sorry, JoshHarrisMusic.com.
There you go.
All together, one word.
Yeah.
Um, but one thing I did want to say, because you had asked me about, like, just a couple things. Just last week, I hadn't done this in a while. I wanted to see how long it would take me to do 50 clean and presses with double 24s, sets of 5.
Yeah.
And I was able to do it in 14 minutes.
That's impressive.
Thank you.
That's very good.
But that's because of all this stuff, combining all this stuff the way I've been doing it, like it works. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Thanks.
And it particularly as an off the cuff sort of a thing. 53 years old, doing 50 clean and presses with a pair of
Yeah.
24s in 14 minutes.
So
And I
the way
will.
I yeah, the way I did it was like, so Levi does a lot of E-nons every
Mhm.
90 seconds.
Aha, okay.
So again, work rest ratios 30, like the 5 reps took me about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Then I'd rest a minute and I did 10 of that. So that basically that last round finished at 14 minutes.
Hmm.
So, but I was just curious, like I haven't done the snatch test in a while. I might try that.
Yeah.
I did do your snatch program, which really helped me years ago, which helped me play with breathing. You have
Yeah.
a way you do. I'm not going to give it away. People can buy the program.
Yeah.
But
It's worth it.
you have a cool way of addressing breathing with snatching that really helps.
I'm glad you like it. I've definitely found it was a game changer. Some might even
Mm,
say a game changer,
yeah,
if we're going to
yeah.
use the puns. Because again, puns are allowed, intended or unintended, on this
Yeah.
program.
And the other thing for those who are considering getting into the Hammerverse, don't be scared of dead bugs.
There's going to be a lot of them.
There's going to be a lot of them. They show up in funny places.
Oh, yes. And, it's funny too. Actually, somebody just emailed me recently, and he said, I have to admit, when I got the 9 minute challenge, I was a little disappointed because I thought, like, well, this doesn't seem difficult. And then I tried crawling for 3 minutes and I was like, why is this so hard? And then I tried 3 minutes of dead bugs. And I was like, why do I need several breaks? And so
Yep.
right then he understood, like, okay, this is like, there's a lot more to this than what I would have thought. And I'm looking forward to hearing how his training goes over the next few months because I think he's going to be very pleasantly surprised at the stuff that it gives back to him.
I did. I remember doing that. I think it was a couple of years ago I did that, and dead bugs were the sticking point for me. I mean, it took me up until probably the end of that challenge to get 3 minutes of them without stopping.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's,
they're hard. It's harder than you think.
yeah, but the ramification that it has on
Hmm.
your squats and your presses and pretty
Yeah.
much everything else, it's through the roof.
And one thing I do want to say for for those who may not be too familiar with how you go about your business is the variation on, let's say, foundational exercises that you provide, things like kickstand deadlifts, just the paths that you've shown us to keep things not only interesting, but I think the body finds it interesting too.
Yeah.
You know, whether we know it or not, to vary these foundational exercises. But I forget what you call it, but it's where you start your swing with the kettlebell behind you in the hike position, but on something like on
Yeah.
an ottoman or on a chair. I don't know how
I
what you're.
I call it the hike position power swing.
Yeah, that one is really, really good for people who may not have ever tried it or look it up on
Yeah.
your YouTube. Because I mean that's what I mean, like starting these exercises from different points in the range of motion of the specific exercise, all that variety. Things can be much more challenging. Also, um, pressing variations where you're moving your feet really close together.
Hmm.
That's a big one.
Absolutely. And these are
Yeah,
things too that allowed you to get more out of lighter weight while they're also helping you to improve your technique so you can
yeah,
continue to build strength and familiarity with the movements. And so by the time you do go up in weight, it doesn't feel like a quantum leap. It feels like it's just the next step on the journey.
yeah. So I just wanted to mention a few of those I had written down, because I think it's important that if people are sort of there's a pretty loyal group of us that are on the calls and do the programs. But for those who may just be listening to listen, the real benefits of working under your guidance are, um, I mean, certainly there's longevity built in
Yeah.
as just a training participant. You're not going to smoke your body and tap out in 6 months because you're running it into the ground.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a very deep understanding of how to connect different areas of training, kettlebells to calisthenics to the original strength stuff. And for those who might not realize it, most of our inner circle people who are on the calls, I mean, I think maybe not all of us, but a lot of us are over 50.
Yeah,
Justin's not quite there,
we'll be there this
and some
year.
other people. Yeah. So I mean, we've got old school people on there.
Absolutely. Old school, swole school, man. We got a
Yeah.
lot of people who are on there who are, as I would like to say, on the wrong side of 40 and 50. We've had some 70-year-olds. So there's a lot that can be gleaned from it. Of course, plenty of 30 somethings and 40 somethings as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but they all have one thing in common. It's that they're crushing weakness, seeing it driven before them, and hearing the lamentations of their women. I don't know if
Yeah.
anybody's seen
So
Conan or not, but that would be,
yes.
but that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that that's kind of that's where I'm at as we get into 2025, and some really, I look forward to this year and continuing to just build off the success of last year. So thank you.
Excellent. My pleasure. It was an easy choice for the Inner Circle Member of the
Thank you.
Year. Was not difficult at all. By the way, do you have the plaque handy so that people
Oh
can
yeah,
see?
let me grab it real quick. Hang on.
For those who are watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see I gave Josh a plaque. So if you saw the episode with Justin, you got to see he had a very cool championship belt that was specifically for him. And Josh
We
is a,
got two things here. So
yeah,
Alex is making up words. Awesometicity.
yes, the
um,
certificate of awesometicity.
right. There's a certificate and this awesome plaque. So
Beautiful.
super cool.
Yes.
Very proud of this.
Yeah,
It was a very cool surprise.
I'm very glad that you liked it. And I was glad I was mostly able to keep it a surprise because I happened to have your address as it was. And I only ruined it just the day of. I was like, hey, did you happen to get anything in the mail? And you're like, I think I got a notification about something.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh,
PayPal
great.
said that Alex Salkin was sending me something, and I thought it might be a shirt,
Yeah, you never know. Yeah, this one's a
So
little bit cooler. Well, very
yeah,
cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on. And
thank you,
again, congratulations on Inner
thank you.
Circle Member of the Year. And everybody who is listening, I am sure you're giving him a round of applause. But if you have not, please do so now. If you yourself are an Inner Circle member, what recommendations do you have for the other people in the Inner Circle who are maybe new or maybe have been in for a good couple of months? And you having been in since 2020, you're an OG at this point.
Thank you.
We'll end
Yeah,
off
I
with
mean,
advice.
I would say it's very easy when you. I mean, I think all of the you guys, meaning like you, Jeff, Levi, Pat, guys that I'm familiar with. I think when people come into a new system or just a new crew of I don't know, new group, let's just call it an online group, online community, that it's very easy to become impatient,
Hmm.
um, manage you're not managing your expectations correctly.
Hmm.
And I find that a lot of people who train aren't doing all that maybe they should be doing. I think you keep us accountable in good ways in the way you write your programs up. And so those who might be new to your world, definitely give it time and take the material for what it is, which is it's tried and tested. It's not off the cuff.
Exactly.
You
Excellent.
know.
Yes. And if anybody can be a testament to that, it's certainly you. You
Thank
have
you.
been there, done that, gotten the T-shirt as it was, and actually
Yeah.
got the plaque as well. So
Yes.
I would say that's a good proof, as good a proof as any.
Yes. Um, and one more thing before we wrap it. Your rings program too. That was one I forgot to mention earlier. Like I had not been able to. I wasn't able to do an L sit, and I was able to get there by the end of that program. L
Amazing.
sit on the rings for a few seconds.
That's sizable because that's not an easy feat. If anybody's ever
Mm-mm.
tried it.
Yeah. So and again, uncovering areas of deficiency.
Absolutely. From
So
deficiency to efficiency. That is what Josh is all about. He is
that's right.
smashing PRs left and right, like like the statues of third world dictators, and he is erecting instead a new and democratic ideal of weakness crushery that's available to all. Of course, the inner circle is $39 a month, at least as of now. I think I'm going to increase the price probably this year. overdue, in my opinion. But I think given how much people get, it's certainly worth it. But Josh, thank you again for
Thank you.
being here. And folks, thank you for listening. If you have not already gotten my 9 minute kettlebell and bodyweight challenge, you'll find a link either in the show notes or in the description. And again, Josh was talking about it and how much he's enjoyed it. Other people have enjoyed it as well. Go to the page and just read what others have to say. And if you have not tried it, I think you'll probably find it pretty interesting. You can do it with the stuff that you're already doing. So some of the stuff Josh and I have talked about with applying certain training tips, tactics, techniques, and strategies with the other stuff you're doing. This is the perfect example of it. You can toss it right in with anything else you're doing, and you're going to feel better as a result. And you're going to be a lot stronger. I don't know if you'll be more attractive, but it's worth a shot. Didn't work for me, but probably is going to work for somebody at least at some point. So, in any case, thank you very much for listening. And as always, have fun and happy training.